welcome to Leonard's Language Lessons. This is writing lesson number 9. Our learning targets for today are I can recall terms, facts, and rules associated with the primary writing modes, list the primary writing modes, and ultimately write informative explanatory texts, arguments, and narratives. So to start us off, which term refers to the type or the purpose of a writing piece? Think about the author's purpose. Why did he or she write that specific piece? Well, that refers to the mode of writing. Next, how many primary or main writing modes are there? There are 3. So what are those 3 primary writing modes? The first is informative/explanatory writing. The second is argumentative writing. And the third is narrative writing. So let's start off with informative explanatory writing. This type of writing increases and or strengthens the audience's knowledge and or understanding of a specific topic. In the past, you may have heard this type of writing called expository writing. They are synonyms. There are many types and examples of informative explanatory writing. Some of the examples include articles, summaries, reports, how-tos, instructions, recipes, essays, speeches, letters, emails, academic notes, textbooks, lessons, lectures, sermons, reference books like dictionaries, thesauri, or even encyclopedias. If you think about all of the purposes of these writing pieces, it is to inform, to educate, or to possibly explain something. So, if a student receives a writing prompt, one of the things that you do when you spam the writing prompt is you look for the mode. So, what are some words that might appear in a writing prompt that signal that the mode is informative or explanatory? Well, obviously, some words that might be used would be inform, information, explain, explanation. Some other ones might include describe, description, details, elaborate, elaboration, or other words that would be similar that indicate that you are informing, educating, or explaining. Informative writing will usually feature the 5W hows. When you're trying to inform someone, they need to know the answers to the following questions: who, what, when, where, why, and how. So if you're asked to write an informative piece, you need to make sure that your writing addresses each of these questions, or you'll be leaving out necessary and important information. Moving on to argumentative writing. This is writing that persuades the audience to change a belief and or an action. Argumentative writing is also known as persuasive writing, or even in the past in elementary school, you might have called it an opinion piece. Some examples of argumentative writing include essays, speeches, debates, editorials, letters to the editor, advertisements, commercials, letters, friendly and business, and reviews, book, movie, play, hotel, restaurant, etc. Now, if a student were given a prompt, again, if you use spam to identify the important parts and you're looking for the mode, what are some words that might appear in a writing prompt that signal that the mode is argumentative? Again, some of the most basic and easy ones to identify would be persuade, persuading, argue, arguing, or argument. But some other keywords might include convince, opinion, or debate. Now, in preparing for an argumentative piece, pre-writing is very important. So what should a writer do to pre-write for an argumentative writing piece? First, the writer needs to form a claim. A claim is basically just a fancy word for an opinion. So you have to choose one side only. Usually, a prompt will give you a choice of sides, and you cannot choose both or your argument will not be very strong. So make sure that you choose one side only. Then you need to state your claim in your thesis. Next, you need to make sure to support your opinion. One thing you need to do as you pre-write is to list at least 2 ideas to support your thesis. Now, if you're doing argumentative writing, you need to make sure that you do or address counterclaims, and we'll discuss what this is later on, but basically it is an opinion that opposes your own. Now, lastly, one thing you might want to consider is, let's say you're having trouble coming up with ideas to support your thesis, you might want to change your opinion if necessary. So if you can't strongly support your thesis, you might want to consider changing it. Look at it from the other point of view and see if you can write a stronger piece from that point of view. Because the whole point behind argumentative pieces is to make sure that you can support your claim or opinion. Now, what is the difference between persuasive and argumentative writing? Well, in persuasive writing, the writer will present a claim or possibly claims and attempt to prove it or them with support, which is reasoning and or evidence. So a claim is going to be a statement of what the writer thinks is true about a topic based on knowledge and research. So basically, it is your point or your opinion. Now, moving on to another side here, you've got argumentative writing, which is basically the same, but kind of takes it a step further and is possibly a little bit more challenging or sophisticated. Because in argumentative writing, the writer should present potential counterclaims and even attempt to disprove them with support, which will be reasoning and or evidence. So a counterclaim basically is a statement that opposes a claim. So basically it is a counterpoint or a counter opinion. So now let's talk a little bit about the terms that we have discussed. Writers should provide support for claims and counterclaims with reasons or reasoning and evidence. So a reason or reasoning is basically a statement that explains why the claim is important. And that's usually going to be based on the writer's opinion. Now, evidence, on the other hand, is going to be a statement that explains why the claim is important, but this is usually going to be based on facts. So to have a well-developed argument, you need to have both evidence and reasoning. Now, arguments, one special identification marker of an argument is that they will usually close with something called a call to action. Basically, a call to action is a portion of the conclusion that urges the audience to take specific action concerning an issue. The speaker may explain how the audience can help resolve the issue. And the speaker may do so by trying to appeal to the audience's emotion, logic, or even their ethics. Now, moving on to our next type of writing. Which type of writing tells a story? Narrative writing. Narrative writing, of course, is writing that tells a story. Now, the purpose of narrative writing is often to entertain. Now, what are some words that if you as a student received a prompt might appear in a writing prompt that signal that the mode is narrative? Well, obviously, you might see words like narrate, narrative, or you might have some words like tell, describe, description, details, story, list, order, event or events, or experience or experiences. Now, there are several examples of narrative writing. The first would be personal narratives, whether it be nonfiction or fiction, short stories, journals, memoirs, autobiographies, biographies, fairy tales, fables, tall tales, myths, legends, plays, novellas, novels, and poems. Basically, there are two types of narratives. What you would call a personal narrative, which is a fictional narrative, and there's a short story, which is usually a fictional narrative. Now, what writers often do is they'll write about events from their personal life, but they'll exaggerate the events to make the story more interesting. Now, to pre-write for a narrative piece, the writer can organize the events of body paragraphs very easily. All you have to do is set it up into a beginning, middle, and end. Now, the beginning usually is going to provide any necessary or relevant background information. Then the middle is usually going to feature the climax, and the end will usually provide the aftermath and or the resolution. Now, the introduction of a narrative will state the event or events that will be the focus of the story. In the body, the opening sentence or sentences of the first body paragraph should identify the setting. Sometimes I like to say that you set the scene. In order to do this, the writer should address the 5 W's. Who is involved? For example, what characters? What is going on? For example, what was the particular event or events? When did the action occur? Where did the action occur? And possibly even, why did the action occur? Now, the rest of the body will address the final question, and that is, how did the event or events occur? Now, the writer may use past tense verbs and a variety of transitional words, phrases, and clauses to narrate the events of the story. The support sentences should feature things like descriptive details and sensory language, and some specific examples of things that writers should do include dialogue, thoughts, and feelings. Now, the closing sentence or sentences of the first body paragraph should tell the last event before the central conflict begins, and it may even preview what will happen in the next paragraph, but it's important not to give away any juicy details. Now, the opening sentence or sentences of the second body paragraph, or possibly the middle body paragraphs in a story, will usually feature an inciting incident. So if you're looking at a plot pyramid, the inciting incident is going to be that area in the story where the tension starts to rise. And that inciting incident, what it means is an event that introduces the central conflict of the story. And of course, the tension rises and it's leading towards the climax. And then what is a central conflict? Well, that is basically just the main problem in the story. And that is usually between two characters, but it could be an internal conflict. It could be between a character and society. It could be between a character and nature. There are many different types of conflicts. Now, the support sentences of the second or middle body paragraphs should include the climax of the story. And the climax, if you'll remember, again, looking at the pyramid that represents the plot of a story, climax is the most intense, exciting, or important point of the story. And again, as the writer is narrating the events of the story surrounding that climax, he or she will continue to use transitions, descriptive details, sensory details to really make sure that the reader feels like he or she is a part of the action. And then lastly, moving towards the end of the body, the opening sentence or sentences of the last body paragraph should begin by telling the aftermath and or the writer's reactions to the climax. Of course, that term aftermath just means what happened after the climax or the most intense part of the story. And again, throughout the supporting details, the writer should use a variety of transitions and descriptive details to narrate. Now, the closing sentence or sentences of the body will probably provide the final event of the story and or possibly may even provide a resolution to the conflict. So again, looking at our pyramid, And that's going to be where everything kind of calms down and it's leading towards the ending of the story. Now, the conclusion will usually provide the writer's reflection of the event or the events. And the reflection may explain how the event or events may have been significant to the writer's life. This reflection will usually use present tense verbs and may be presented in the form of a theme. And now a theme is going to be a lesson, a moral, or a main idea of the story. And so to wrap up narrative writing, usually the writer will tell what the lesson of the story is and usually how he or she can apply that lesson that they learn to their future life. Now let's see if we have accomplished our learning targets. I can recall terms, facts, and rules associated with the primary writing modes. I can list the primary writing modes. And hopefully I can apply what I've learned by writing informative and explanatory texts, arguments, and narratives. Thank you so much for your listening today on writing modes.